Hi, this is Kevin Lee. Recently, I've seen some questions and confusion in the community chat about how IV and IV skews affect butterflies. I talked about this topic during my roundtable interview in Capital Discussions. I realize the concepts are kind of difficult to explain clearly with real market data because it's difficult to isolate the IV effect in an analysis. The data is kind of like quote unquote contaminated by delta and theta effects. So what I've done is I created an Excel tool that is based on theoretical model. With that, I can easily just look at IV and IV skew and how it affects the butterfly position. But before we do that, a quick refresher on how IV curves moves in response to a change in the underlying price. So this is a typical volatility curve. Now, when the underlying moves in price, for example, like RUT, if it moves 20 points, the curve will go towards the right by 20 points. That's called the horizontal shift. This is the first step. Then after that, they will go through a vertical drop. Now, when the market moves up, usually, but not always, the volatility curve will shift downwards. And then step 3 is a shift in the slope or the skew. Typically, I would say around 70-80% of the time when the market moves up, IV falls, the IV skew will steepen. Steepening means a clockwise rotation. Whereas the reverse is true when the market drops, the IV will go up and the volatility skew will do a counterclockwise, which is flattening. So with this concepts, these three-step concepts is important, is because we'll be using that to explain some of the features in the analysis later. Okay, now you're looking at the Excel tool. It's not the best looking UI, but it works. What you see here are two gadgets. One on the left is the IV skew, and this is a P&L graph of the spread. I can let's just look at this IV skew first. Now this IV skew is shown here. This is the IV. These are the strike prices, and what I can do here is I've got 3 dimensions of movement. One is the horizontal shift. Okay, I can shift it horizontally this way. I can also shift it vertically down or vertically up. And the third dimension is steepening and flattening. Okay, as I click on this, what you see here is that the table on top captures the position that is shown here. This one is a butterfly, 50-point butterfly with a short strike of 980, and then 10 lots. Here I've got the IV that is picked up here. The blue line is the first line, and the orange is the second line. So everything that you see here with a 1 corresponds to the blue line, and anything with 2 corresponds to the orange line. Okay. Now I've got here the IV, the time value, the price, and the cost, which is just the price multiplied by number of lots, and also the P&L. P&L means the difference between the first line and the second line. If I shift the IV, we will see a difference, and then I will take the difference, the price difference, and then the P&L. So the delta, the theta, and Vega. Here I'm also capturing the delta and price of the second line. So which is this one, price and the delta, as well as the corresponding P&L. Now let's dig in and do some fun stuff. What you're seeing here is a butterfly, and the current market price is here, is 1,000, and the strike prices are here. So you can see that this is a pretty typical 20-point bearish butterfly, representative of a 50-point wide RUT butterfly. The prices here looks quite familiar, the delta number, and the IV right now is here, is in the low 20s. So a $9, $10 price is quite reasonable. So now what I can do here is I can change the IV. Let's do it vertically first. Let's drop the IV. So look here. The orange line is the result, which is the IV number 2. So you can see that for every strike, the IV difference is the same. It's because I dropped it vertically. Now, in a real life situation, this is difficult to achieve because any drop or increase in volatility usually comes with underlying movements as well as theta decay. So it's difficult to study the effect of IV on its own, and that's why I created this tool. So now you can see that when the IV is reduced vertically, the P&L increases. There's no surprise. That's what the Vega describes. We have got a negative Vega for the butterfly, and when every strike drops its IV the same way, then this would be a good representation. The Vega will be a good representation of the P&L effect. Likewise, when I increase it, you see a decrease in P&L. Now let's try something more fun. This time, we're going to change the skew. Now look here. When I click on here, the skew steepens. As it steepens, the volatility decreases, but this time it decreases in a different amount for each strike. So for the legs of the butterfly, you can see that the long leg on the right decreases the most. Now the P&L continues to increase because all of these strikes are decreasing. And what I would like to point out to you is that the effect of P&L is determined by not just the change in IV, but also how much time value there is. And if you look at the time value is the most at the money. As it goes out of the money and in the money, it decreases. And the at the money is 1,000. So the 980 short strike is the closest to the market price. Therefore, no surprise that the time value of the short strikes are the highest compared to the two long legs. Therefore, these are the dominant legs for this position from a time value perspective, from a Vega effective perspective. So later when we talk about weighted Vega, this would be a very important concept to keep in mind. The end result of the weighted Vega is a combination of how much changes there are from IV perspective and how much time value there is. So as you can see from the P&L perspective, you can see that these two combined, the short strike combined, has got a bigger gain due to the reduction in IV compared to the long legs added together. Therefore, you end up with a positive P&L. Now, let me show you something interesting here. What if I change this and move it to 1030, for example? So now market is at the long leg on the right. What you can see here is now the time value of the long leg is dominant. See? This dominates, is bigger, much bigger than the rest. Therefore, the weighted Vega effect this time is different. Because of the drop in IV is bigger on the right leg. See, this is 0.6 points versus 0.4 and 0.3. So the net result is you get a bigger P&L drop on the right leg. And this overwhelms the positive P&L from the short strike. And as a result of that, you actually get a decrease in price and a reduction in P&L. Although the IV change negatively, for butterfly, it should increase. It should increase the P&L. Vega is still negative here, but the result is completely different. It's the opposite of what Vega predicts. And this explains the concept of weighted Vega. Again, weighted Vega is a combination of IV change multiplied by how much time value there is in each leg. Now let's do the reverse, flattening the skew. Once I flatten the skew, each of the strikes experience an increase in volatility. The upper strikes has a bigger increase in volatility than the lower strikes. Therefore, the upper leg, which is this one, experienced the highest IV difference compared to the rest, and it has the highest time value as well. Therefore, this is the dominant leg. In a normal situation, when IV goes up, you would expect the butterfly price to fall. But in this case, because this is the dominant leg, you end up with a higher price and higher P&L, although the Vega is negative. Okay, let me show you another interesting concept. Now, just now we said that in a real life situation, it is usually is unusual to only see either a volatility skew change or a volatility skew moving up or down. It is usually a combination of three movements. The horizontal movement. Let's assume that this particular underlying, let's say RUT, moves up 30 points. And then it depends on how much is the volatility drop. Let's say the volatility, if the volatility drop is not big, it's a minor drop like that, and then the volatility skew steepens at the same time. So let's assume it's like that. Then you end up with a crossover. A crossover is when some of the strikes experience a reduction in volatility, some of the strikes experience an increase in volatility. Does this happen in real life? Yes, it does. Let me show you an example. This one. This is 15th of June 2015. You can see that the lower strikes experience an increase in volatility, whereas the upper strikes experience a decrease in volatility when RUT moves up from here, this price to this price, and the volatility skew steepens. So when this happens, it will be an interplay between the IV difference as well as the volatility, as the time value that you have. In this case, for example, the short strike actually experienced no change in volatility difference, whereas the upper strike has a slight decrease, and the lowest leg, the left leg, has a slight increase. Because this is the dominant leg, again, the time value is the highest, therefore it dominates the outcome, the P&L outcome. Therefore, there is a reduction in the P&L, although that from a IV perspective, you would expect that a butterfly to gain in price, but in reality, it isn't. A common question that I get is when a volatility skew steepens or flattens, what is the effect on butterfly price? So it really depends. I've shown you that it all depends on which is the dominant leg. How much does the skew flattens or steepen, and where is the price relative, the market price relative to the legs of the butterfly that determines the final outcome. Therefore, it's really hard to have a rule of thumb to tell you whether your butterfly is being hurt or or there's a benefit to it. Now, another thing that I would like to talk about is that what I've shown here is a linear relationship, is a linear straight line. In reality, the volatility curve is not completely linear. It is linear in some portion, and then it starts to become non-linear on the upper side. So this is a very important concept, because when you have a linear section, the changes in volatility is not a lot, given a change in skew relative to the non-linear part, which is used to be which is the upper part. So you can see here, when there is a skew change, the upper part, let's take this particular strike, the drop in volatility is severe, okay, compared to something here. Even when you don't have a crossover like this, when you have something that looks like this is a very typical non-crossover steepening of the skew curve. Look at the U curve here, the non-linear part. Each of these strikes actually experience a much larger, if you compare this distance to, let's say, this distance, this is like 3 to 4, maybe 3 times the of this. Therefore, it is very important to pay attention to the right leg of a butterfly. The short strike and the left leg usually do not experience huge change in volatility as compared to the right leg. If the right leg steps onto any of these strikes, it will experience a much bigger drop. When the right leg steps onto these strikes, your short strikes is probably here, and your left leg is probably here. So comparatively, this one will be in trouble, depending on whether you want it to go up or go down. So that's one important concept. The second concept that is important is that the shape of this line sometimes will change quite drastically as well. Sometimes it could be flat and then doesn't curve up, but curve down before it starts to curve up. So there is two areas of non-linearity, and sometimes you will have a bigger curve, sometimes you have a smaller curve. So there's a lot of variations in the shape of the IV curve. Therefore, the way to analyze this is not trying to come up with very simple rules that when you see a skew flattens or steepen, therefore you will likely have something happen. It can't be done that way. It has to be monitored. It should be the best way to do it is graphed it. It's much easier to see it graphically. We don't need to have a very sophisticated mathematical tool to describe this. Sometimes you just look at the skew curve, you would know which leg is in trouble or what do you need to do. Let me show you how you can make use of this information in real life trading. Now assume for a moment, now we are going from the red line to the blue line. The market dropped from this point down to this point, probably about 30 points drop. The IV increased and the IV skew flattened. Now assume that your what do you call that, the short strike used to be about here. Now when your short strike is here, your long leg will be around here. So now that the market has passed your short strike on the way down, your long leg will typically stand on this U shape. When there is a rebound, you can expect the IV curve will go from the blue line, steepen to the red line again, or even more because over time, there's a natural tendency for IV skew curve to flatten, even without any change in volatility. So when that happens, you can expect your right leg to be crushed. But since the market is near your short strike right now in the beginning, the total effect will not be very large because the short strike is the dominant leg. But as the market continues to rebound and move towards your right leg will become the dominant leg. And that's when this crush will be significant from a P&L perspective. Therefore, that's what I used to watch when there is after a rebound is stable. Usually, what I would do is I would shift in the right leg, move it away from this U curve more towards the center. With this, usually we will flatten the T+0 line on the upper side much more than usual. Even with a more positive delta, I know that that positive delta will go away when the right leg is crushed. So this is something that actually helped me in many situations. Before I knew this phenomenon, I always experienced the right leg crushed. That took away much of my profit. Okay, let's go back to the Excel spreadsheet. And now let's take a look at a different type of analysis. I'd like to look at a delta right now. As the implied volatility goes down, the delta of a butterfly becomes more negative. Take a look. So it decreases it, it becomes more and more negative. This is a well-known fact for butterfly traders. In low IV environment, you tend to get a more negative delta. But I want to show you what if the IV skew is steeper. You get the same lower delta. Take a look. It's more and more negative. However, there's a difference between a steeper skew and a lower overall IV. Both will create a more negative delta, but the shape of the T+0 line will be different. For the steeper skew, you will see that the T+0 line kind of like shifted towards the left-hand side, so that the tip of the what do you call it? The tip of the hill is shifted leftward from this blue line. The tip of the hill is here, whereas this one is back here. And then pay attention to this crossover. It is at the edge of this butterfly tent, and the yellow line cuts the zero line within the tent. But if I were to reduce the volatility vertically down like that, okay, you would see that it is a much flatter T+0 line. The crossover between the blue and the orange is well outside the tent, and the crossover, the cross between the yellow line or the orange line and the zero line is more towards the right hand side. So the orange T+0 profile is quite similar to the profile of the original blue line. So what does that mean? It means that if the lower delta is achieved by steeper skew, you actually have more gamma problem on the right hand side. That is something that butterfly traders would need to pay attention to. Now, have you ever wondered why does a butterfly start with a negative delta, and the T+0 line is not symmetrical along this central axis? That has to do with IV skew. With a skew, you will get this type of T+0 profile. If I were to flatten the skew, take a look at the delta and also the shape of the T+0 line. Delta becomes more and more positive, and then the shape of the T+0 line becomes more and more symmetrical. If I flatten it enough, delta will eventually become zero. Okay, so it doesn't need to be completely flat to get a zero delta. That's because of cost of carry and also the dividend. But look at how symmetrical this uh, t plus zero line becomes. So that's a nice to know fact. I hope you like the analysis that I've shown you that can be done by this tool. In fact, this tool is quite versatile. It can do analysis for any type of spread. I can, make this a broken wing butterfly, for example, by, let's say, shifting this to 990 and 990, so that this becomes a broken wing butterfly. You can do that, or you can I can even make this a condor, like 1020, and then this one is 940, for example. This becomes a condor. All kinds of analysis possible. Let me know if you'd like me to show more analysis. I'm getting feedback on how to make use of this tool, and if there's any suggestions of what kind of other features that I should add, send me a note. Before I end this video, let me address a common question that I get. The question goes something like this. You see, I don't really need to know why and how the engine works in order to drive a car. So as long as I can trade profitably, why should I care about why things happen the way they do? Seems like overcomplicated. Well, okay, let me give you my personal thoughts on this issue. Now, if you are a beginner trader, I agree with you, you're right. There's really no need to learn things like IV skews. It might be an interesting knowledge for you right now, but trying to do something with it might actually overcomplicate things at this stage. Instead, your primary focus should be on learning to trade the trade plan. However, if you are an advanced trader who are already profitable trading income options, I'll give you a couple of reasons. See if you agree with me. One, the in-depth knowledge of IV skews can help you make better trading decisions. Skews determine if an adjustment is optimized or not. For example, if you are trying to fix a delta issue, you can attain the same result with many different methods. Some will be more efficient than others. Now, in this situation, understanding how IV and IV skews impact those adjustments actually will give you an edge. Then the second reason I think is longer term, is more strategic. If you are currently trading a plan created by someone else, think about it for a moment. What if the market environment changes and your plan stops working? Would you rather depend on others to fit you with another trade plan? Or would you rather have the ability to create a plan for yourself? If you prefer the latter, then I would say understanding the why becomes very critical. Now, it's my conviction that this principle is true universally for mastering any skills in life, be it playing golf or playing a musical instrument or simply cooking. As a beginner, we tend to follow instructions in order to become competent quickly. Well, that's great, and probably that's good enough for a hobby. But if you're doing something professionally and have to be at the top of your game, you simply have to master the craft. And to do that, there's really no shortcut. You just have to focus on perfecting the fundamentals. IV and IV skews are so fundamental to options. Many other advanced traders already understood how to deal with these effects intuitively. They have many years of experience to develop that. They may not have used the same methods that I did to learn, but the end result is the same. They do incorporate this knowledge in their trading. But for others like me, I cannot depend on anecdotal experience and educated guesses. I can't internalize new knowledge that way. I have to dissect a complex issue into fundamental components and I try to quantify them as much as possible. That's how I learn. It's much easier for my brain to process numbers and graphs. It's more of a data science approach to trading. So that's why I created these Excel tools and models to help me make sense out of something that have so many moving parts and so complicated. So now I'm sharing all these new research with anyone who think the same way. Well, in part, I'm also hoping to create more conversations around these topics that I think are critical to options. It's not just about IV and IV skews though. There are many other topics like options modeling, options software, etc., etc. I hope by doing so, we can grow together and we can increase the overall knowledge base. There's so much more insights and new techniques that can be derived from it. So please feel free to contact me via email, forum, or chat. Let me know if you have any comments, questions, or suggestions. Thank you and happy trading.